G'day, and in today's episode I'm going to be putting down the tile underlay sheets. I'm starting to work in the ensuite, so what I'm doing, I've just stripped the floorboards of their polyurethane sealant. So I didn't have the camera on me, but I've stripped them back. As you can see, they're sort of raw edge right now. And then I'm just going to sweep and then get ready for the glue, and then once I've smeared on the glue with the trowel, down go the tile underlay sheets and nail them off at 150 centres. So I'll get into it. You might be wondering why I'm using just a normal old broom, the old school way. I was finding that the actual sawdust is really sticky because of the polyurethane sealant that was in the floor. Try and get it so it doesn't spill everywhere. But it's really thick and it was clogging up the vacuum. So I've just gone back to the old school method, and then once I've got the majority of this cleaned up from the floor, then I'll go back and get my wet and dry vac and get this surface as clean as I possibly can, so it's a really nice surface for the glue to adhere to. I thought this would be interesting to show you how much is actually being sucked up by this and being caught in our vortex. It's quite impressive actually. Look at that. That bucket is almost full of sawdust, and that's because it's going through our first filter, which is this little vortex here that we got. So it goes through this vortex, splits out the majority of the large debris into this first stage bucket, and anything left over comes into the second stage, which also has the HEPA filter in it as well. Pretty good. Now you can see here on the ground where I've stripped the surface, and that's the original there, so quite the difference, and having a nice scuffed surface will just make it a lot better for the glue to adhere to for the tile underlay. Alright, so I've got my cement sheet cut now, so I'm going to place it down. I know the sheet is 1800 by 1200, it's a full sheet, so I can mark that. Running the 1200 this way, and the 1800 this way. That just gives me a rough idea now where I want to spread my glue, so I know it's roughly there, so get a little bit past it just so it squeezes out just a little bit, but not too much for the next sheet. You want to stagger your joints as well. Always refer to the product manuals for the install guides. Now, stud adhesive to adhere it to a hardwood floor, and a notched trowel. This is a 3.2mm V-notch trowel, so I'll just spread that around, and that's what my marks here are for, so I know where to spread the glue for. It's nice, just a little bit of glue popping out, so I've got the full sheet covered then. So I've got my mark here where I'm going to cut. Don't need this end of the sheet. Got my centre point here for this waste outlet for the toilet. What else is there? Oh, this is the sheet that I tested in the shower originally, which I broke the back of. So, you know, a nice little offcut for this piece. And then for the next sheet, I'll put the full sheet in this corner, in this angle here. So I'll have a joint here on this sheet, and then I'll have another joint there. So they'll be staggered like that.
Alright, so I'm now up to the final sheet that's going to go in here, but I've got a bit of a tricky situation. So if you look here, there's actually two studs sort of truncated back. So you've got one on the leading edge and then one that's sitting back. And that's a little opening there that I've made for this cavity slider just here. So that cavity slider will sit inside of that frame, and the reason I've done that is because you really do need a proper surface to fix your fibre cement sheets to. Fixing to the back of this is just, you know, some people have done it, but it's absolute garbage. It's only thin pine or ply, sorry. So yeah, definitely not a surface you want to be fixing any types of sheet or any weight to, and there's guidelines for that as well. So what I'm going to be doing is getting this cement sheet. It's going to come out, and the way that it will be framed for the finishing is the waterproofer is going to put an angle in here all the way across, but I want the slider, if you can imagine it sort of like that, to be sitting on top of the tiles as it slides out, which means I want the angle to actually start somewhere about there, which means I need my fibre cement sheet to come out to there so the angle can sit on top of it. And the next step in the finishing process will be I'll put some architrave down this side which will hide anything underneath it. So what I'm going to do is the cement sheet's going to be notched around this edge, and as long as it comes back just enough that it can be hidden, so I can get that aluminium angle for the waterproofer to come back and go maybe even past that stud a little bit and then go back. And then if I put the architrave up on this front edge, you won't be able to see the end of that aluminium angle there. It'll be covered by a piece of architrave on the edge of the cavity slider. So sort of something like that. So if you can imagine, that's the bottom of the cavity slider, and that's my architrave. I'll sit it like that so it's hiding any of the aluminium angle going back into this long cavity, and the cavity slider then will sit on top of tiles rather than hanging in the air on top of timber. I think it'll just make it look a little bit more finished.
Alright, so we're all done now with the flooring. I've got the cement sheets down, they've marked at 150 centres, all nailed off with the fibre cement sheets. I do know that you can use a coil nailer these days under the spec guide, but I just never, to be honest, have found, well, maybe it's just my skills or maybe it's the gun, I'm not sure. I can never get it quite to be just right, as compared to hand nailing, how it's just sitting below the surface. These are hardwood floors, so I'm just not sure if I'm driving the nail too far and turning up the PSI too hard and it's just driving straight through. I just can't seem to find that balance to just get it sitting just right. Maybe if I had a pine subfloor, like a chipboard, like we had in the extension, it might be a bit better because it's a bit easier to handle, but I found with the hardwood I had to really turn it up to get it to drive. And then when I did get it to drive enough to sit down, it would just blow through. I couldn't find that sort of medium in between. Stay with us, we'll be doing the walls and the ceilings next, and then waterproofing after that. And then finally after that you'll have the tiling and then the fit out of the shower screen and all the rest of it. Alright, well subscribe if you haven't and keep following along. Thanks guys.